podcast. Um, so today we're going to be going over a little bit of NFL news, not too much to talk about, but talk about a little bit stuff going on. Then we're going to go over Graham's top 10 NFL teams going into week 16 and going to go over my MVP lotto too. And then the main part of the podcast is we're going to be talking about what we have going on the rest of the regular season for the NFL. It's already week 16, so there's week 16, 17, 18, and that's the playoffs. We're just going to go over our end of year standings and maybe talk about some of the deciding games to look forward to the rest of the year. Then we're going to give our Super Bowl prediction. So, anything to say, Graham, before we start?
Now let's get right into it, man.
So, recent NFL news, not too much going on. Just a lot of injuries kind of from the quarterback position. I see Trace McSorley is now starting for the Cardinals, so that's interesting to see. Because Colt McCoy filling in for Kyler Murray is hurt. Nick Foles is starting for the Colts, who just been pretty much a mess this year. And yeah, there's not too much NFL news going on. But we can talk about Steelers legend Franco Harris passing away. That's unfortunate news to hear, especially because he's getting his jersey retired this weekend, as it's the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. Big play in NFL history. So yeah, that was shocking news to hear this morning. But anything you would add?
It's funny because to think about that play with Frank Harris is that if you think of a historical play that keeps getting replayed and replayed and replayed over time, it's always the Immaculate Reception, and it is kind of sad to see he's suddenly gone. So, but it's fitting that he'll be able to get his jersey retired this week, I think.
Yep, that's the game I'm looking forward to, Raiders Steelers. But we can get into your top 10 NFL teams. I'm going to pull up the graphic real quick. We're actually pretty similar on these, so let me pull it up.
I think there's a very big gap between the top 13 teams up, but I think my top 10, I think it could be perfect.
Oh, you think there's a gap? So you think there's a clear top 13?
Yeah, I think so.
So looking at your top 10 teams, Eagles still sticking at 1. I think they're the obvious number 1 team, only 1 loss on the year. I think the second team has 3 losses. So yeah, you can talk about your top 10 teams now, and I'll chime in whenever.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and start off with the top 5. I'm going to go 1 through 5. So Eagles, obviously number 1 team in football, only 1 loss, and that 1 loss was a very close loss to the Washington Commandos. But I will say Jalen Hurts getting injured and possibly not playing this week, that game against the Cowboys needs to be a must-watch, because if Gardner Minshew does not play well and they lose that game, it gets a little bit more interesting with the NFC East. Coming in at number 2, I got the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, this team is just hot. They are really good, and we've seen them beat the Chiefs, and now later on in the year they're going to be playing the Bills, and it'll be interesting. Excuse me. I got the Chiefs at number 3. Just tough loss to the Bengals a couple weeks ago. Good bounce back game against the Broncos. Need to see that defense play better. Chiefs, also another game that they need to be playing better is obviously against the Texans. But the Texans, usually when the good teams play a really bad team like the Texans, it's always kind of like a close trap game. So I'm not too worried about them. Coming in number 4, the Bills, after a close game against the Miami Dolphins, which I feel like should have never been that close. The Dolphins play and practice in Miami. I mean, and yet it's still a close game a little bit.
Yeah, the Dolphins, I will add, the Dolphins, they kind of impressed me that game, then disappointed me. I didn't think it'd be a close game. I thought it'd be a 10 to 15-point game, so semi-close, but not too close. But they were right in there until the end, and they actually had an 8-point fourth-quarter lead, so
yeah,
that was impressive.
Yeah, and then coming in at number 5, I have the Jimmy Garoppolo-less 49ers. Brock Purdy is kind of turned out to be a pretty good little quarterback, but I think instead of it being more impressive from Brock Purdy, obviously he's done a lot of good. I think it goes to show how good Kyle Shanahan's scheme is, because he can throw any quarterback in that situation, and all of a sudden these little 5-yard out routes look really, really easy. And I think that if you throw a different quarterback like a Jameis Winston in that system, I think it'll make Jameis Winston a lot better than what he actually is. And I think we're seeing that with Brock Purdy. And that defense, what is it like? They're first in total yards a game, first in turnover points, and then yards a game. It's really crazy how good they are. And it all starts off with that middle linebacker by the oh my god, what is his name? Why am I going blank?
Fred Warner.
Fred Warner, thank you. Wow, I cannot believe that. Fred Warner is a beast. It is crazy. It's like watching Luke Kuechly out there. I don't know if you remember, just Luke Kuechly just all over the place, hitting people, covering people, stuffing the B and the C gaps on run plays. It's just really fun to watch him. And then coming in number 6, I got the Minnesota Vikings. The team, honestly, all top 10 of these teams, other than the first and second team, like the Eagles and Bengals, they all kind of give me like little scares. They're very vulnerable. And the same with the number 6 and 7 team. The Vikings, sketchy. And then that's all I have to say about the Vikings. Kirk Cousins, great comeback, but that comeback should have never happened. They're lucky that they play the Colts quarterback because it seems like that's all they do is choke. And number 7, I had the Cowboys. Dak Prescott does not look good. 10 interceptions since he's been back. He has thrown an interception each and every single game since he's come back from his injury. Something is not right, and I can't tell if it's the offensive line or if it's just Dak Prescott himself. Now I don't think the Cowboys are legit, which makes me very happy. Number 8, I have the Dolphins. They impressed me with their loss this week. I think them going up into Buffalo in those freezing temperatures with snow and still keeping it competitive and also having an 8-point lead at the end of the game is really impressive. They may not have won, but it shows that Tua has heart and it shows that that whole team has heart. And I think they're going to go far in the playoffs. And then my final 2 of this top 10, pretty controversial, but I have the Lions at number 9. You want to talk about one of the hottest teams in football behind maybe the Bengals and Eagles? It's this team right here. The Detroit Lions behind Jared Goff and Dan Campbell are really good. It makes me so happy that they got healthy at the right time and now they're making a push for the playoffs. I would be careful if I am an NFC team that may not want to play a 7 seed, this is the team I would not want to play. So for me, who's in the second seed right now, the 49ers, I would be careful because this Lions team is sneaky good. That defense has gotten healthier. That offensive line is probably the best offensive line in football. Jared Goff looks like an elite quarterback, which is very nerve wracking. And now the run game between DeAndre Swift and Devontae Williams is looking really, really spicy. Coming in at number 10, I have the New York Giants. If the Washington Commanders would have won that game last week, I would have had them there, but the Giants won. Granted, maybe the rest may have helped them out just a tiny bit, but nonetheless, they did win, and I have them at the number 10 spot, and they are in the driver's seat of making a wild card spot.
So overall, I have similar rankings. I have some thoughts on like the landscape of the overall conference for each teams, but I'm going to save that for whenever we go over our predictions. But yeah, nice to see the Lions playing some good football. Even as a Bears fan, I kind of want to see the Lions do good just because it's kind of fun for the NFL. But I have the Lions at 11, so I don't quite have them in the top 10 like you. But still impressing me. That O-line's definitely very dominant on the offensive side of the ball for them. And yeah, just looking through it, I don't know quite about the Bengals as high as 2, but with the way they've been playing lately, I definitely can see the case for them being at 2. But yeah, I'll save some of my thoughts for whenever we do our predictions. But now we can switch over to my MVP ladder. Let me pull that up. So MVP ladder. Present mode. So MVP ladder, I have Jalen Hurts currently as the MVP. It's kind of a 2 race for me. I think Joe Burrow still has time to sneak up in there, especially if Jalen Hurts is out for an extended period of time, but it doesn't seem like he will be. But right now, with Jalen Hurts being questionable this next week, I think Mahomes really has a good opportunity to get back in the driver's seat. As you can see over on the left, since about week 9, I think it's been back and forth between Mahomes and Jalen Hurts. Mahomes had a bad game a few weeks ago, forgetting who it was against, but overall, I think Jalen Hurts, with the team being a one-loss team, I definitely think he should be the MVP. But I think Mahomes still has a chance to win it again because like I said, Hodge could be out, and Mahomes has been playing good ball himself. This Chiefs team, I did not expect this offense to be as good as they have been this year. And it's really because Mahomes is having arguably the best year of his career. So definitely a two-way race. Would you agree on that?
I think it's a 3-horse race,
With
but
Burrow or Josh Allen?
Burrow.
Okay, yeah. I mean, maybe definitely a little bit higher on the Bengals than me, but we're both pretty high on them. But yeah, I think Burrow's having a good year too. But I just don't quite think he's having the year that Hurts or Mahomes have had. But Burrow could definitely still get in there. Allen's not too far out of it too, especially if the Bills can win that big Monday night game versus the Bengals and potentially be the 1 seed. That'll help Allen. But yeah, interesting. We have a comment: Lions winning out. Well, we are actually about to get into that stuff. So, let's get into the next part. And my cat wants to come in the room. What am I doing with this? So we are switching over to playoff predictions for the rest of the regular season standing predictions for the rest of the year. We're not going to go over all our playoffs. We're just going over the Super Bowl. But anyway, here is our predictions for the AFC for the remainder of the year. So we both have the Chiefs going 14-3. That would mean that they win out. They do play the Seahawks, Broncos, Raiders, so not a tough schedule really. So Chiefs, yeah, they're looking good. Do you have anything really to say about any potential loss that they could have out of those 3 games? Or do you think they're going to win all of them fairly easily?
I think they'll win all of them fairly easily. The one I'll be watching is actually the game this week. The Seahawks have a lot to play for, trying to keep their playoff hopes alive slightly. So if they end up losing that game, I wouldn't be too shocked, but it would be a little surprising.
On to number 2, I have the Bengals 13-4, and so do you. The big game for the Bengals is the Monday night game. If the Bills can win that Monday night game in Cincinnati week 17, that has the Bills jumping up all the way to the 1 seed. But I feel like the Bengals are a little bit more complete with the ability to run the football compared to the Bills. So I think that's what kind of gets them over the top. And as good as Allen's playing, I think Burrow's playing a little bit better than Allen right now. So I think that the Bengals are going to beat the Bills, and they're at home. But that's a game that definitely kind of a coin toss type of game. But that's a big deciding factor because that would mean that in all likelihood, these teams would play again in the divisional round, where if the Bills won that game, the Bills would be the 1 seed, and the Bengals would probably be playing the Chiefs in the divisional round. And my cat just opened my bedroom door. But anyway, we can move on to the next part. The Bills. Take it over from here.
All right. So at the number 3 seed, we both have the Bills going both 13-4. Kind of like how he said, I think how the Bengals are going to play on week 17 against the Bills is going to decide the fact of these top 3 teams. I think that the Bills will lose, and we both think, and that the divisional round between the Bengals and Bills will be played in Cincinnati once again. So that'll be very interesting to see. But we already talked a lot about the Bills since we already saw 3 teams. Moving on to the number 4 seed, we both have the Jaguars at going 9-8. So that means we both believe the Jaguars will win out and the Titans will lose at least, 1 game or 2 games?
Yeah, the Titans will lose 1 game. And it's mainly that last game comes down, Titans-Jags, to winning the division. The funny part about this is the thought of the Jags winning the AFC South didn't even cross my mind like the last month until Sunday whenever they beat the Cowboys. And I realized, wait, Titans lose to the Chargers, they're only within 1 game, and they play the last week, and the Jags have the tiebreaker. So that it's really all going to come down to that last game in all likelihood, unless the Jags lose to the Texans or something. But yeah, that's exciting for the Jags. And I just think the way Trevor Lawrence is playing, I think at home versus, let me make sure that game is at home. Jags, Titans, yes, it's in Jacksonville. So I think the Jags, the Titans getting healthy could be dangerous, but I think the Jags are going to handle them in week 18.
So the biggest factor for me has Jaguars coming into the playoffs. The fact that Trevor Lawrence has been playing the best quarterback in football since. If you look at it statistically, Trevor Lawrence, if you took the MVP race and started it from week 7 to now, would be number 1. His passing yards, his completion percentage, And the way that the Jaguars has been in week 8 has been a complete 180 from how they started the year. Similar to another team that we'll talk about on the NFC side.
I want to look at the Trevor Lawrence stats real quick. So, looking at the quarterback stats, I think it's more of week 7, maybe a week. I'm going to go a week later or two. I'm going to go to week 9 to now and see what it is at. From week 9 to week 15, the number 1 quarterback PFF is Trevor Lawrence with 14 touchdowns, only 1 interception. So he's been playing kind of out of his mind since then. 82% adjusted completion percentage, that's first. A 70.4% completion percentage, that's first. Yards wise, he's not first, but he's still has a lot of yards at 1,600. But yeah, Trevor Lawrence has really stepped up his game, and he's kind of putting this team not single-handedly because he does have some decent weapons, and a good coach, but he's really elevating this team more than I thought he would this early on. But on to the next team, Chargers. This team's starting to kind of get going, and they could be dangerous, but I still don't like them versus some of the big dogs in the AFC. But the Chargers 11-6. You have anything to say on them?
They're finally getting healthy. I think Ryan Staley saved his job for another year, and that's all I kind of have to say.
On to the Dolphins. Kind of impressed me with the way they played, even though they lost in Buffalo this last weekend. Just those receiver duo is just going to be so hard to cover, and that's what makes me think that I don't think this is a Super Bowl team, but it wouldn't shock me if they upset one of the top 3 teams in the divisional round and then made it to the conference championship. But I kind of think that's the ceiling, just because I don't think Tua, though he's had a pretty good season, he has cooled down recently. I still think he's slightly okay. I'm not going to say slightly, but I think he's a good quarterback who had an elite start to the season. But I don't think he's like an elite quarterback. But definitely a dangerous team with the coaching and the overall roster and speed at receiver. But on to number 7, we have the same 5 through 7. We have the Ravens at 7. We both agree that once they get Lamar back, they should still be good enough to get into the playoffs, and they have a favorable schedule. The last 3 games of the year, they play the Falcons, the Steelers, the Bengals, which is going to end up being for the division, in my opinion, not in your opinion. But I don't see them beating the Bengals. But if they do beat the Bengals week 18 in Cincinnati, I've had both teams 12-5, and I believe, let me double check, that would put the Ravens. Yep, that would put the Ravens winning the division over Cincinnati. But I don't think that's going to happen. But anyway, anything you want to add before we move on to the NFC?
I think it's funny that we have the exact same 7.
To be honest with you, I kind of had the Raiders, Jets, Patriots all kind of doing poorly, and the Titans doing poorly out. So I have the Ravens 11 wins. My 8 seed is the Titans at 8. 3-game difference. That's probably not going to happen, but that's just how I had it happening. So
I had actually, if you had to take a guess on who you think my 8 seed would be, who do you think it would be?
Jets.
You're wrong. I actually have the Steelers.
I like it.
Finishing
at 8-9 or 9-8.
9-8. So these final 3 games, I have
them play the Raiders, Ravens, and Browns.
So the reason why I have the Ravens going due to the Steelers upsetting them at Baltimore, because I don't think Lamar Jackson will be back for that game.
I think he will be.
I don't think so. Even if he does, I still have the Steelers winning. And then I have them winning out and beating the 18.
Interesting stuff there. But we can move on to the NFC. The Lions 7 seed for you, not for me. But starting off with the Eagles, I have them losing 3 games just because I think they're going to lose this weekend with, Hurts potentially being Cowboys are a tough team. It wouldn't shock me if they won because they're still the best team in football, but I think they're going to lose in Dallas this weekend. Then week 18, I have them playing a meaningless game versus the Giants, who are trying to hang in the playoff, and I think the Giants beat them in that one. So that's how I have them getting 3 losses, but still the best team in the NFC, probably the best team in football. Anything you want to add to them?
It'll be interesting to see what they do with Jalen Hurts this week, but overall, I mean, I still think they're going to be the best team in football by the end of the year. I think their one loss that I have them losing to is if I have them losing to the Giants week 17 as well. I do have them losing to the Giants week 18. That's due to just rest. They're going to rest all their starters. It's pretty much going to be like a week 4 preseason game for them. But moving on, we have the same second and third seeds just flipped. I have the San Francisco 49ers finishing the same record as the Vikings, which would give them the tiebreaker at 13-4. You have the 49ers losing one more game than me, going oh wait, you have the Vikings winning one more game, excuse me, than me.
Wait, who do you have the Vikings losing to? The Giants?
I have the Vikings losing to, if I am not wrong, I believe it would be to the Giants. I think the Giants will do good at the end of this year.
Okay, yeah, I could see him losing the Giants this week and coming
Oh,
off.
I have them losing Week 18 to the Bears as an upset.
Okay. Now let me talk about. I could see him losing the Giants, coming off an historic comeback this previous weekend. Maybe have a little bit of a down week, but the Bears Week 18. I mean, who knows? But kind of bold there from
So
you.
do you remember about 3 years ago when the Bears were this close from upsetting the Green Bay Packers and giving the Saints the 1 seed compared to the Packers?
That was 3 years ago.
I don't know, is that 2 years ago? I don't remember,
Might have
but
been. I think it was 2 years ago when the Bears were playing to get in.
yeah, and they almost won, but they just lost.
So basically,
That's
what you're saying is the Bears are going to beat the Vikings.
the Bears will do it.
Okay, well, yeah. I actually want to say something though. So looking at the NFC landscape, I think the Eagles and the Niners, although I have the Vikings at the 2 seed because of the hot start, I think the Eagles and the Niners are the 2 top field cut favorites for me. I think that the Vikings and the Cowboys are 2 teams that I could see just having those random weeks where it could be happen in the playoffs where they just lay an absolute dud and just looks like sloppy and really lose. I wouldn't be shocked if either of them lost a playoff game by double digits. Not that I'm predicting that right now, but they're just those type of teams that I could see that happening to. Where the Eagles and Niners, I don't see them having a bad game here on out.
Where I see
A bad game would be like a close game. I don't think either of them is going to like lose, just absolutely have a sloppy playoff game where they lose by double digits or something.
So how I see those 2 teams, the Vikings and Cowboys, is it all stems back to two things: coaching and quarterback play. If you look at both of those teams, they have a little questions about coaching, more with the Cowboys than the Vikings. The 2 things that they're centralized together is the quarterbacks. Dak Prescott, we all know he's not necessarily the best under pressure, and of course, primetime Kirk is not a good primetime Kirk. So
And going back to what you said about the Niners, like even with Brock Purdy, it's weird to trust him more than the Vikings and Cowboys, but it just goes to show how good of a coach Kyle Shanahan is and how good of weapons they have around them. And that defense is just unreal. So I'm confident the Niners a lot going into the playoffs. But we can move on to the Bucks, who are going to win the NFC South probably, which is looking like historically bad division. I have the Bucks finishing better than you do. I think they beat the Cardinals, Panthers, and Falcons to get to 9-8. But even me, I don't know if that's going to happen. I could see him finishing 8-9 or even 7-10 like you, but I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. It'd be interesting to see how they play the Cowboys in a playoff game. I don't think the Bucks would beat them, but it'd be interesting to see if the Bucks could keep that a close game. But yeah, I don't really think the Bucks are going to do much going here on out.
I think they are going to struggle at the end of the regular season. Divisional games, especially this year for the NFC South, as an avid NFC South watcher, has been abnormally competitive. And I think actually the Buccaneers will slip up a couple times as the other NFC South teams believe they still have a chance to make the playoffs. And they're going to play Tom Brady a little bit more tougher. We've noticed this year that with Tom Brady struggling with his offensive line, that there is the different blitz packages that you can do that will always get to Tom Brady. And I think teams are starting to figure it out. And I think that's what's causing them to lose.
So now I'm going to kind of cover 5-7 on my own, and then you cover your 5-7. I mean, we don't really have much to say about the Cowboys, but what I will say is I think the Cowboys, seeing that they can't catch the Eagles the last week of the year, and the Cowboys can't be caught by either the Giants or Washington or Lions or whoever at the end of the year, as far as my predictions, I think the Cowboys rested the starters last week, and that benefits the Commanders who play them. And I think the Commanders beat the Cowboys week 18. And the Lions, I have them at 9-8. I have them just missing because I think that the Lions are going to win the next 2 games versus the Panthers and Bears, but I think the Packers are going to get on week 18 and pull off an upset. And I think that game is in Lambeau. Yeah, that game is in Lambeau, so that's tough tough environment, end of the year, must-win game. I feel like the Packers are going to get them that game, but so that ends up getting the Commandos in the playoffs. And as I already mentioned, I had the Giants beating the Eagles last week because the Eagles will probably rest the starters or would only play them the first half or something like that, having the 1 seed locked up. So yeah, that's my NFC standings: 1 Eagles, 2 Vikings, 3 Niners, 4 Buccaneers, 5 Cowboys, 6 Giants, 7 Commandos. Interesting to see all 4 NFC East team making the playoffs. Which if you said that a year or two ago, people would have thought you were absolutely insane because of how bad this division was. But they've turned it around, and kind of like it because I kind of like to see some of these teams do good. But yeah, you can talk about year 5 through 7 now.
So you've kind of already mentioned how I feel about the Cowboys. Is kind of how I feel about you, but I have them losing one more game than you, and I believe that one game is to the Commanders. Commanders and hold up, give me a second.
Do you have them losing to the Eagles or
I have
beating
them
them?
losing to the Eagles. I have them losing to the Eagles, and I have them losing to the Commanders.
And you have them beating the Titans.
And I have them beating the Titans on Thursday night. But what I will say is that I think this number 6 seed right here between the Giants and Commanders, how I had it laying out was whoever won this past Sunday night's game was going to have that 6 seed, and whoever lost will be out of the playoffs due to this number 7 right here, the Detroit Lions. I have them win and making the playoffs, which is absolutely crazy, but it is what it is. I'm gonna go try to find my top 7 teams. So I do have it right here. So I actually put start of the year that the
We
Vikings
know.
lose and go on a losing record, which obviously was wrong. But I had the Lions finishing at the 7th seed, going 10-7, and making the playoffs. So I really hope this happens because this allows me to go to Nick and make fun of Nick because I predicted last year that the Bengals would finish 10-7 to the Super Bowl. Nick called me a moron.
Okay. No, I didn't say anything about that take. I said the Lions take was bad, and the Lions take is looking right. So I'll admit my wrong on the Lions take, and I was wrong on the Bengals last year too. But I didn't make fun of you for the Bengals take last year.
I think you did a little bit, but
Okay, but anyway, yeah. So what I'm getting out of this is next year you're going to predict the Bears to go on a big run.
the Bears are making the Super Bowl. No, I'm just kidding. But I do think this Lions team has turned it up on the exact right time. I think they're going to win out. I think they're going to beat the Packers week 18, and they're going to make the playoffs. And bold prediction, I think they'll make it out of the wild card round. I think they'll beat the San Francisco 49ers, and they'll make it to the division.
Whoa, okay. If they play the Vikings, I could see them being the Vikings, but no way they beat the 49ers in the playoffs.
I think they do. I think they find it.
When we get there at the end of the year, we'll see if you still think that they match up. But anyway, before we end the podcast, quick Super Bowl prediction. I have the Eagles losing to the Chiefs. I think that the Chiefs, I trust them the most, the quarterback and coaching, to get out of the AFC, even though the Bengals are a tough outing, and the Bills and the Eagles. I just don't know how far Shanahan can take this team on his third string quarterback, even though Brock Purdy has looked solid. So I think the Eagles still win the NFC. And I think that the better quarterback wins the Super Bowl. Right now, you can argue Hurts is better than Mahomes, but I think when it comes to big playoff games, Super Bowl, I'm going to trust Mahomes to beat Jalen Hurts and have the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl over the Eagles.
So my Super Bowl, I actually really like your prediction. I think the way you explained it actually almost convinces me to change mine. But I'm going to stick to my gut. I got the Cincinnati Bengals winning the Super Bowl against the Philadelphia Eagles. I think it's a little too soon, as you said, for the 49ers to say, like, oh, they're going to make the Super Bowl again, due to just the fact that they're so injury-riddled, the quarterback position. But I would love to see the Eagles win another Super Bowl, but I don't think it's Jalen Hurts' time yet. I think he needs 1 more or 2 more years of just straight development, and we need to see him blossom into that true superstar that we know he can be. And we've already seen the blossoming of Joe Burrow. I think last year when we saw that video of him sitting there, it gave us esque of Tom Brady. And I think this is the first year we're going to see Joe Burrow finally strap on those boots and take over the reins of the future Tom Brady.
Okay, now we don't have to end the podcast comparing someone to Tom Brady. But anyway, one more thing. I'm going to say something you said. will kind of add to it. Jalen Hurts, I think, is already turned into a superstar. I think it's just I just don't think I can trust him more in a playoff game than Mahomes. And with the Eagles, though, the window's now. The window's now, probably next year, because soon they're going to have to start paying Jalen Hurts. They built a good roster around him. Don't know the future salary cap situation off the top of my head, but definitely big chance for the Eagles with the team they have
Defense
this
isn't
year.
getting any younger either.
Yeah, the defense isn't getting any younger, so definitely big chance for the Eagles this year. But
Yeah.
I think Mahomes and company in Kansas City is going to win the Super Bowl, which is not something I would have thought before the year, considering I had them as a wild card team. But anyway, that is the podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed. And anything you want to add before we end the podcast?
I don't really know what to say. Oh, I remember. So, I think what needs to happen with the NFL Pro Bowl games now is that we need to get rid of flag football and we need a giant worldwide soccer event. We need to see these true athletes play soccer, and we can prove to
What?
the world that our best athletes, best at soccer, and then we'll take them to the World Cup and win the World Cup.
Okay, interesting way to end the podcast. But Merry Christmas, everybody, and we'll see y'all next time.